Hello, I'm Carey Anne Nadeau, founder of ODN, and we're back with Profiles in Risk, a podcast that enlightens the world of risk around you. Each episode, we explore insurance through the stories and experiences of the most influential thought leaders, product developers, and entrepreneurs modernizing the insurance industry. You can find more content at odnsure.com/thegolfcourse or show notes on insnerds.com. Enjoy this episode. I'm joined today by some very special guests who are joining us from AXA XL. This is Justin Gress, Director of Strategic Operations at AXA XL. He's also, interestingly, a 2018 Business Insurance Breakout Star. Glad to have you on the podcast, Justin. Justin's also joined by Gary Kaplan, who serves as the President of the Construction Unit at AXA XL. The construction unit went from zero to $650 million in premiums since its inception in 2011. And Gary's been a very instrumental part in growing that team up to 85 underwriters, doing a cumulative amount of business, about $3 billion of business since 2011. So we're thrilled to have you guys on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you.
So today on the podcast, I wanted to cover a few topics that our audience would be excited about. And that would range on really three things. One, it's going to be sort of the organizational growth. Just a brief outline, and the numbers that I've shared are astounding. I know there's a lot of work, a lot of effort, and a lot of team building, frankly, that goes into building an organization of that size. So I do want to touch a little bit on that. And then I want to move into really your strategy for growing, for engaging more folks in the insurance industry and staying ahead of the innovation curve when it comes to bringing in new talent as well as finding new technologies. So I want to start actually on the vein of how you grow and build a team. And the reason you guys are in Toronto, Canada today actually is in part related to that. So maybe you could share a little bit about sort of what you were doing in Northern Illinois to kick off the podcast.
Yeah, so on Monday, Gary and I co-taught a class on leadership essentials to 58 College of Business students at Northern Illinois University. It was a sold-out show. We ran out of chairs, and the focus was to bring some very basic management leadership concepts into the classroom, sharing the model that Gary started and developed called the Leadership Planning and Execution Model, with the focus on really sharing with them that, you know, it's a journey of planning the work and working the plan throughout the year, and how we involve various levels of our organization in that process.
Fantastic. Planning the work, working the plan. That sounds like a great motto. Where did that originate, and how does that materialize?
It comes back to what's a leader responsible for? What is leadership all about? And I've been doing this for 40 years, so I've got a lot of experience, and I've been thinking about it a long time. And as I came to work here at XL, I really did have a lot of success early on, and tried to spread some of that to the rest of the company, some of the other leaders, and I didn't have a really great way of explaining it. So there became this need to come up with some kind of a model, some type of a process, so I could explain to other leaders what we were doing in construction. It was resulting in 45% annual growth with profitability in year 2 all the way till this year. So, you know, whatever we're doing is working really well. And as I tried to spread that across the organization, I found the need to come up with a model. And really what it boils down to is that a leader has to do two things simultaneously, but you're forced to do a plan. I mean, almost every kind of company, whether it's public or private, has to do a plan. So you should do that plan as best as you can, right? And at the same time, you're working on a plan for next year. You need to implement the plan that you did last year. So those two things are going on at the same time. Greg Hendrick, who's now our CEO, actually coined the phrase "plan to work, work to plan." I think it's been around a long time, but he saw my model. He said that's exactly what it is. You got to do a good job at coming up with a plan, but more importantly, you have to help your people during the year, you're coming up with that plan, execute on the one that you did in the prior year. And we were having a tough time at the company at hitting our plans. So, he could see that construction was exceeding the plan. So he said, what are you guys doing? Why is it working? And how do we get that into the hands of some of the other?
Fantastic. And maybe you could dive a little bit deeper on that. What are some of the key things that you do to stay sort of ahead of the game while simultaneously keeping up with, what's going on a day-to-day basis? I think a lot of insurance technology companies, other sort of insurance carriers would be eager to know, how do you stay ahead of the game while also on top of your tasks?
Yeah, so I think the essence of the leadership model that we built is, I call it a project-centric leadership style. Probably the greatest tool that I ever learned was how to do a project and how to implement change through the project process that teaches you how to do something called rapid results initiatives, real simple way of doing a project. The thing I really liked about it's results focused, it's short term, it's like 90 days. And what I started to realize was the more frequently you could do a project, you could get to that whole continuous improvement. But even more importantly, it resulted in huge amounts of innovation, because you were basically pulling your people together and trusting them to come up with a way of solving either an issue or an opportunity or a challenge, and empowering them to work together to try things out. Take a low risk, but see if they can come up with the right solution. And lo and behold, people really do like to be asked their opinion. They do like to stop doing the mundane work that they're doing every day and get involved for 90 days. It's something that's a little more exciting, something that gets some other exposure. They get all kinds of leadership training, teamwork. The team leader develops leadership skills. It's a great way of implementing change and driving your employees to get to the things they need to do to be successful. And if you do that, you end up having a better chance of hitting your plan. So it's kind of funny, because as you work the plan and plan the work, I could see right away that these projects would be a benefit for us, and they were. That's how we launched the business. We did it with projects, and people would get engaged, and they liked it because they were building the tools that eventually they were going to have to use every day. So why not get them involved?
Yeah, it strikes me that you as a leader at the top point to sort of the people below you and the team that you've built around you as an important asset, that it sort of is a multiplier of the sort of new ideas that you can bring into the organization, the effort you can bring to execute. I know you have a number of programs in addition to sort of the rapid response teams where you're bringing in younger professionals, maybe millennials, maybe people who are on a leadership track or would like to get on that leadership track. Maybe you could share some of your experience with those programs as well.
Yeah. Something we did a few years ago is we realized as the construction team continued to grow, there was an opportunity to promote from within. We had a lot of strong underwriters and risk engineers who needed to take on a leadership role, who wanted more responsibility. And a lot of those folks have fallen into what we would consider in the millennial age group. They had several years of underwriting experience, and they were ready to do more. And so we brought roughly 20 or so of them together to Chicago in the dead of winter for a few days, and did 3 days of leadership training with them. All kinds of team building activities, how to manage employees, how to listen. And by the third day, we realized this was our extended leadership team. This is a group of people we needed to regularly engage and develop, both virtually and in person. And they've really been incorporated into the leadership planning and execution model. They contribute to our strategy building. They contribute to our customer council. They develop training for their folks. And on a monthly basis, we bring them together and talk about a topic that's important to them. So it could be diving more into the financials of the company and how we do our financial plan. It could be more leadership based on concepts they should think about with their team, such as how to ask good questions when you're sitting with somebody who's presenting to you or with a customer. So some are basic and some are more technical, but the important part is we're a very flat organization. So we have to find ways through these projects that Gary mentioned, as ways to give people leadership opportunities besides, the traditional hierarchical having a large number of people working for you. And we found it to be very successful. So now we're 3 years in, we've introduced more people into the extended leadership team, and it's a way to get people engaged, and it's working.
Well, I have to ask, how many people gave you feedback that you listened to that never Chicago in the winter ever again for one of these leadership training? Maybe go to Orlando or Texas somewhere maybe instead. No, I think that strikes a question in my brain about, a couple things. One, people who take a nonlinear approach to joining the insurance industry, maybe mid-career, or switching tracks within the insurance industry mid-career. What sort of skill sets are you looking for from those sorts of, maybe folks that are on a traditional path, but also those that are on a non-traditional path? What are the skills that you're seeing you need and you need to build?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So a couple of things jump out at me. I like to hire people that are constantly trying to learn more.
The industry that you insure is also rapidly transforming. So important to listen to not only your internal team and the needs of how your organization are going to grow, but think about, who you serve, your customer. As the sort of construction industry has seen dramatic changes over time, how are you, definitely hiring strategically is one way, but maybe other ways that you've thought about being thoughtful about listening, collecting feedback, and better serving your customers?
Yeah, so the listening part is something you can teach,
Mm-hmm.
and we found a really good book. One of my underwriters in Atlanta sent me this book called Rainmaking Conversations. It was perfect. It was exactly what I was trying to do, without having written a book. So I read the book. I gave it to somebody in our training department. They turned it into a training program. We taught everybody how to get better at asking questions. Get the customer talking. You'll find out everything about them. They'll tell you everything you need to know, and then you can reply with your value proposition. What is it that you're doing that's special? What sets you apart from the conversation? But a lot of our people would go in and they would just pitch. They would talk about, I do this, I do that. It was all about me, me, me. It's so much more effective to ask the customer what is their strategy, how are things going with their business, and then work your way into all the things that you have to offer in response to what they basically say when you ask them the questions.
Mm-hmm.
Justin, you helped with that program. You have any comments?
Yeah, I would say that we did that, but it's a constant training that's occurring on our team. It isn't we just pick rainmaking conversations because it's the flavor of the moment and drop it. It's something we continue throughout the year, and we've really built a strategic training plan where we're connecting with our team on a monthly basis at a minimum,
Mm-hmm.
and then we're recording all the calls, which is great. So as we onboard new employees, we've got a built-in training suite of both topics such as that and more technical construction topics that they can listen to and watch the slides for, that's ready to go. We don't have to wait for somebody to become available. The other thing I'd say that Gary's really been instrumental about is voice of the customer. Mm-hmm. and informally surveying our customers around why they're doing business with us and why they're attracted to AXA XL. And because of that attitude, it's allowed our employees to go out and do the same thing. They go out and they survey customers and really get to some of those most basic things that are important to our contractors and our brokers, which I think is unique, that we're not doing a net promoter score. It's very, very simple. And I think that's an important part of the team, is that, doing things simple sometimes are very effective.
Yeah, it strikes me that a lot of the stuff that you do it seems branded. There's taglines, there's things that you can motivate the team to sort of join around. There's missions, there's punchlines, there's regular meetings to stay up to speed. That sounds intentional.
It is, and I would say what the leadership plan and execution model offers is really consistency. Mm-hmm. So we are consistent in everything we do. So we've had a monthly all-employee virtual call the last 96 months in a row since the team started. Never miss a month. It's on the same time or the same day of the same week every month, and it's published. people want consistency. They want to know when they're going to get information. We share it in a variety of ways besides the call. But to be able to look at that model and say, this is when we're going to do the strategic plan. This is when we're going to talk about a SWOT analysis, a broker, distribution analysis, et cetera. It's all in there, and it allows our folks to be creative, but also prepare. Mm-hmm. They know that in October, we're going to start working on our operational plan that supports the financial plan we just finished. So, we feel strongly people strive on it, and we're seeing in our employee engagement survey scores as well. We're in the 90s in terms of our staff being engaged, which is just amazing.
That's an incredible, I'm glad you're keeping metrics of that success too, because anecdotally is very powerful to tell specific stories, but to move the dial in the aggregate and set your own goals is probably quite useful as well. One thing that strikes me is your willingness and openness to recording employees or encouraging employees to create more content. We observe in the insurance industry in general that employees are some of our greatest advocates for the services that we provide. How do we get more folks to find their voice and share what they know about what they do inside the insurance industry?
Yeah, so I think our leadership team is really set the pace in terms of being okay to put yourself out there and share content. And it goes beyond just putting it in their goals. That's something we could do. In some cases, we do that. But it's really more about being passionate about the topic you're speaking about, and that everybody has something to share, and making it easy for them. So we've got great folks in our communications department that helps those that aren't English majors, and I don't think any of us are. But more importantly, how do we know if this is working? Our team is coming up with ideas for these trainings and for these articles. We're not necessarily asking them to do it at this point. They're coming forward on their own. We've got enough all-employee training calls scheduled through midsummer already, which is just amazing to me. We've got more topics and speakers that are interested than we have, the time to do it. Mm-hmm. Same thing with external articles. We've had to create a calendar of when we're going to release them, just because there's so many folks on the construction team that want to make this contribution, and they see the value and the benefit. And there's nothing better to any of us than to see a customer, a teammate comment on your article on LinkedIn and see that they've read it and they want to talk about it. And right now we actually have a customer we're doing a pilot with around a insurtech company. He said, I read your article, I read Gary's information about rapid results initiatives. Can we do one together? And that's just so powerful. It's something you don't get via email. And I think it attracts younger talent to our team, because they see we're constantly evolving in terms of offering training, trying to give people more information, and giving them the ability to get out there on social media and feel comfortable.
Yeah, and have a voice and feel empowered in a way, it sounds like is a good goal.
Right.
Yeah, I build on that, Justin, and say, we do a lot of the stuff ourselves, but I also on the outside, and I look for people that are really good. And, from day one, I've been bringing in a guy named Mike Josan. He has a company called Clear Communications. I think he's 80 years old now, but he is the best presentation coach I've ever seen in my life. I've been using him since 1999. He's probably trained 500 people at least. And virtually everyone on my team has been with him multiple times. He's very dramatic. He teaches you, what's the right way of making presentations. You can't just make it even if you're the most intelligent person in the world, if you don't know how to come across, nobody wants to listen to you. So everybody on the team gets that background, gets that training. So yeah, we're showing up in a big way now at all the conferences that we have in the construction industry, and there's quite a few. I think at the last one we had in November, we had 5 speakers on that agenda, including Mike. I had him, he actually present to our competition, because they certainly could use the help too.
That's very generous of you to spread such a good resource, bring him a little bit of business in his 80s as well. No, that's great. I think that's a great asset, and really tapping on something that other insurance carriers need to hear, I think, which is if millennials like using social media to network, why not make it an asset to the business to network professionally and network in order to promote the good work that you're doing within the organization? There seems to be sort of either a culture of fear or a culture of like not really understanding the power of social media, and so a resistance to it. What makes you guys so different? Like, where did this idea come from? Because it's not ubiquitous across the industry.
Yeah, just one comment about the millennials and social media and texting and email. We just had an incident here. Sometimes you just need to pick the phone up and call somebody, and you can get it resolved in like 13 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of going back and forth, sometimes just getting on the phone. You could actually use the texting or the email to set up the phone call, because that's actually a better way of getting somebody nowadays. But yeah, sometimes just stop at all that, pick the phone up, get it resolved.
Yeah, I totally agree.
People cooperate more when you're face to face or talking on the phone.
Absolutely. So it's really augmentative to the very traditional technologies that we have. Even just getting in the same room as someone, having a personal conversation. Like no need to even introduce a phone as a piece of technology into that. But whereas that's evolving, right? And it sounds like AXA XL is keeping pace with the way people like to communicate, to build networks, to build relationships. It's a relationship business. So it seems like you're ahead of the curve on this one, on adding social, adding maybe LinkedIn or Instagram. I'm not sure. What is it that you encourage your folks to use?
Yeah, so I think we realize that, traditional emails of here's some articles to read, that does work in some cases, but when you just send an email blast out, there's more effective ways today. So I've seen us continue to evolve in the way that we communicate.
Mm-hmm.
So we're putting our articles out on LinkedIn. We're putting it out on AXA XL. It's called Fast Forward, where you can take a deeper dive into a variety of interesting topics. And we quickly saw with LinkedIn, just via our networks, via the team's networks, and teaching the team how to share appropriately. So if Gary posts an article, how can they share it with their network?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just amazing how many hits that you're getting the first couple of days and the people you're hearing from. So it makes you want to do more.
Yeah.
So we've been going both of those ways. AXA XL uses Twitter as well to share where people are speaking and what they're speaking about. But we're finding LinkedIn to be a very effective medium right now in terms of getting the message out and hearing back from people. And in some ways, we're hearing from people that you haven't heard from for a long time. That probably, if we just send them an email, it just stays in their inbox and they never get to it.
Exactly.
Something that Justin and I do on a continuous basis is we're always trying to improve our people's work life. Justin does this target operating model exercise once a year, brings the teams together. We try to find things that they're doing that really aren't fulfilling or adding a lot of value, and then we try to either offshore them to people we have overseas that are employees, or we automate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always looking for something else. One of my guys sent me a book a few years ago called Slack, and it basically said that if you're filling up everybody's day, every minute of it, every day with work, there's no chance for them to think.
Mm-hmm.
There's no chance for them to write. There's no chance for them to develop these kinds of articles and presentations. So we're always looking for some way of changing that so that people can, stop and think and find that part of the day when their mind is the most, working the most creatively.
Mm-hmm.
A really good example is a guy we found about 6 months ago that teaches you how to use your software. And this was something that just floored me when I met this guy and he came in and he promised he could save me an hour a day just in Outlook. And I said, no way, I know what I'm doing in Outlook. And he put his computer on the screen and he started showing me these shortcuts that exist in that software. And frankly, I had never even seen them, because after a while you train your eyes just to look at the middle part of your screen. You don't look at all stuff on the outside. So we've had this guy now around for about 8 months, and he's training virtually everyone in our company how to use their software. We already paid for it. It sits on their computers, it's on their phones, it's on their tablets. He shows you all these really cool shortcuts that nobody in the company ever shows you, and no one takes the time to actually see what Microsoft changed or Apple
Mm-hmm.
there. And people are they're so happy, because at the end of the day, you could spend all day in Outlook and you really didn't get anything done. He shows you how to be very productive and how you use the Outlook and how you manage your time so that you focus on the stuff that really makes a big difference. And if you do that, I'm getting 2 hours a day now, not just one. So this guy was fabulous.
Absolutely. We hear that from a number of folks. I certainly am probably could benefit from a training in Outlook, but in general, finding internal operational efficiencies is one way that insurance carriers are actually gaining competitive advantages in realizing it's not just about pricing appropriately, but also managing your team to use their time effectively, to target customers you really want, to spend time with customers you want to keep.
Right.
Your time is really precious.
Yeah, you gotta, we use the plan, the work the plan. That's how we create those efficiencies. We didn't touch on the plan, the work very much, but there's every company has to do a financial plan. That's kind of the, for us, it's from like June to November. That's required. Everybody has to do that. But they don't have to do the things that lead up to the financial plan, which I would call strategy update. I would call that competitor analysis. That's optional. We've made that mandatory now so that we update our strategy every May. I bring in the extended leadership team. We look at what we had in place. We update it. We change it. We actually take that internal strategy and we try to write it externally. So what would the customer really care about our strategy? And then we communicate that to our customers, which is fascinating to see how they respond to things that we think are important. Even more importantly, the thing that I recognized very early on is that there was no formal process after the financial planning period to operationalize that. In other words, you kind of know what you're going to have to do on the financial side, how much growth you're going to have, how much money you can spend, how many people you can hire. But we do something called operational planning in the month of November and December, where we create that portfolio of projects that we're going to execute next year. That's the work, the plan piece. We get about 50 projects a year. Justin and I put them on a 2x2 matrix. We prioritize them with the leadership team, and then we sequence those out throughout the year. That's how we work the plan.
I like it.
And that's where we discover a lot of talent on the team that isn't on the leadership team yet, right? So it's really interesting to see how our folks perform in these projects. What they all learn something from it, and it creates unique opportunities for them that gets them more engaged, increases their skill set, and gives them a chance to see if leadership's for them.
Right.
Maybe they find out that being a technical underwriter is a better track for them from doing some of these projects. Maybe they find something that is interesting to them that they want to explore more. But these projects are being developed by them, not by us, right? We're there to facilitate. We're there to help guide. But we look to the team to really come up with those things that are going to be the focus of that plan.
So where does the team source these ideas?
I believe it really starts with the strategy meeting. It's what they see in the marketplace. It's, as they're helping build the financial plan, it's the reaction to that of how we're going to get there. And we've kept it really simple, and we group the whole operational plan around 4 levers. It's growth, it's profitability, it's expense management, and it's talent. So every project we do fits under one of those 4 buckets. So either it's growing the business, it's making it more profitable, it's reducing expense or finding efficiency, which is the target operating model, or it's developing talent. And that's really how we manage those projects, is making sure that if we've got a large new business growth goal, we should have a lot of growth projects to go along with it. If we're seeing a business that needs some help from a profitability perspective, we should be seeing more projects there. It's simple to understand. It's just the way that the team has begun to operate. And we've involved the extended leadership team the last 3 years in doing this. And I would say the vast majority of them are coming up with these on their own. And they could be very specific to their region or their product. It could be a new product, or it could be something much bigger in the way of innovation. But it's an exciting thing to see the level of engagement around.
Yeah, I think I would love to touch a little bit more on some of these projects. What's worked, how they started, where they've originated. So I know in your roles, you have a very distinct privilege of seeing quite a few innovations from the outside cross your desk, right? I have a curious question to know, like on a weekly or monthly basis, how many insurtechs or technologies do you think knock on your door
Every day.
every day?
There was a period of, it was 2 or 3 a week.
That's a lot. So 2 or 3 a week times, 12 months, you're talking about 40 to 50 conservatively new technologies that come across your desk. You're kind of the gatekeeper, if I can classify it correctly. So curious to know how you think about your role of seeing these new technologies, either bringing them to your team, bringing them to market, bringing them to leadership at AXA XL. How do you position yourselves and your responsibility in seeing these new technologies come across your desk?
Yeah, you said that the construction industry is always changing, and it really hasn't changed that much over the years. It's pretty much like it was 100 years ago. There's a lot more safety than there used to be, but they kind of build the same way they always did. So there's a lot of room for productivity improvements in the construction industry, and their ability to adopt technology is very slow.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all these new technologies now are coming into their industry because
sensors, you have LiDAR, you have
exoskeletons they put on the employees to make them stronger, and there's monitoring, there's high definition video cameras, there's a company that we invested in that monitors the atmosphere continually, 8 different atmospheric conditions. So you have a complete record of what happened at that project, so that you can defend that contractor if they get sued, or if the subcontractor was at fault or whatever. So I think that's the future in our business, that this technology is going to really change the game at all aspects, safety, fire, property exposures, professional liability, pollution, all of those things that we sell. I think the technology is going to be able to help us be more profitable because of its ability to continuously monitor that site. So great question. How do we sort through that? I mean, I just had to start writing down all these companies and rating them basically, and saying which ones that I think were the most interesting. What did I think of the CEOs? Because most of them are 1 or 2 people. I mean, they're not companies. It's an idea. And a lot of them don't understand the insurance side yet. So, we felt like we would partner up with a few of them, actually use the Rapid Results Initiative process to do a project to see if there was the value that we thought was there. And Justin just kicked off 3 projects with 3 different companies that we thought had the highest potential for our customers, and ultimately for the benefit that we would reap on the profitability side. And we found a couple of customers that were interested. We agreed to pay for it. We're gonna for the next 90 days put that technology on their projects and see what value we think we can get out of that. This really could be a big game changer for our.
And Carey, it's not just the insurtechs reaching out looking to have meetings. It's also our customers saying, who do you recommend? What's been your experience with drones or with environmental monitoring? And they're doing that because we're their trusted advisor. Our underwriters, our risk engineers, the leadership team, the contractors look to AXA XL in that light.
Sure.
So that creates even more urgency. So not only do we want to always be ahead of the game as a leading construction underwriter, we also want to develop a strategy around insurtechs, around the technology piece that's beneficial to our customers and their employees, and to AXA XL as well.
Sure. So it's becoming knowledgeable of technologies, even if you're not testing them right now. Certainly when your customer walks in the door and says, I'm interested in a drone technology, you have some sort of back pocket concepts and companies you might reach out to. That's really quite cool.
We're putting one of our risk engineers full time on this.
Really?
I can't take all the information that's coming into me. Is too much. So I've got somebody now that's going to be responsible for us providing a service basically for our customers, so we can consult with them on what we think works or doesn't work. In addition to that, I think the right thing to do as an underwriter is to encourage the customers to adopt. And so how do you do that?
Mm.
You have to change the way you select the customer, right? You have to change the way you price the customer. It all comes down to risk selection and pricing. So we have to ask the customers more questions about this new technology so that they know it matters to us, and ultimately it matters to them because it shows up in the premium dollars that they have.
Sure. So maybe that's one way you prioritize that list, or the gentleman you're delegating this role to is really value to customers. I'm an insurtech.
It's actually a woman, so.
A woman. I apologize. I was gendered specific. Thank you for correcting me.
Yeah.
A powerful, wise woman, I'm sure,
Absolutely.
will sit in that position. Good on you guys, and good on her. Curious though, how she is going to sort of prioritize that list. Is it value to customers first? Is it, demand from customers, already hearing this from customers and we've been looking for a solution? Or is it, no, we see the future here. We can tell where this is going. We see losses before the market understands that there's a trend, right? Curious, what brings some companies to the top of your list? And maybe it's a personality characteristic too. You mentioned the CEOs, sort of how you can relate to them, how you can work with them maybe, but some characteristics that you would suggest a startup, maybe coming to knock on your door soon, should emphasize in their pitch and presentation to you to make sure that their value really does come across.
Yeah, I think it's very similar to how we pick our employees. They have to have that ability to want to learn and develop and change. Almost every one of these companies that I talk to are doing something different than what they started doing. So they've adopted. They've realized that their idea wasn't that great, but they saw something else. They went in a different direction, and they got more and more traction. We've picked a few companies now that have had some success. So we're kind of going with a slightly more developed. They maybe have 3 employees, instead of 1. It's really kind of interesting. And then we pick customers that are interested in this. A lot of the bigger contractors now are hiring things called chief innovation officers. These are the people that they're putting on their staff to try to weed through all this and decide, where should we spend our money? And that's the key thing at the end of the day. It has to make financial sense to do it. And I have to convince our actuaries that, yes, in fact, by putting this technology on the site, it is going to impact the loss ratios. Ultimately, it has to be reflected in how we reserve and how we price the business.
Yeah, and I'd say where do we feel that the insurtechs could improve or take the feedback, which is develop specific use cases that our customers see the financial value, the life value in terms of this technology is going to keep my employees safer. Here's some specific examples of how it works, in the job site. And that's where we think our risk engineer is going to come into play with all this, is that she's on the job site all the time. She's spending time with these contractors. She's going to help us and them identify those use cases to help promote the use of these insurtechs and all this new technology.
And I hope she's also one of the folks that'll be writing too. So to communicate it out to the insurtechs to say, this is a problem that we're looking to solve. Are you thinking about that?
Yeah, she's already out there in the marketplace doing a lot of writing, speaking, et cetera. She spoke at ERMI this past year. So, we totally expect that to continue. At the same time, she's going to be a good connection point to run some of these local pilots and projects with her.
Love it. I love it. And for the insurtechs out there, I think a good sort of tagline, maybe we'll have it adopted at some point at XL, is riches and niches, right? It's good to find a very narrow lane where you can execute and where maybe there aren't a lot of competitors doing something as specific and important as you are. I think that reflects really your comment to make sure that you're not trying to boil the ocean and come in and say, I'm going to completely revolutionize, flip the table, disrupt all of insurance. I've got a very narrow use case that I can test in 90 days. And to Gary's point, maybe show ROI on the loss ratio.
Yeah, if you really think about, we made a big investment when I started up this business. I actually hired the claims leader and the risk engineering leader before I hired any underwriters. I started out as a risk engineer. I really believe that there's a huge power in having those people consulting with your customers. So we've got an army of risk engineers, and you think about what they do. they try to get together with the customer and help them, but they can only do that at some frequency that I can afford. They
Right.
can only go out to the project maybe once a month or once a quarter. This new technology puts that risk engineer on the project every minute of every day.
Mm.
How could that not have a huge, huge impact on how people behave and how people ultimately respond to input that they're getting from this new digital technology? It has to have a huge impact on all the lines of business.
And that's where we're really going behind the scenes is, can we integrate all this data, between our actuaries, our claims folks, our risk engineers, and this technology? Can we start seeing trends differently? Can we start looking at customers through a lens that supports them and their growth in creating safer environments?
Mm-hmm.
And that's ultimately what we're also looking for in these insurtech partners, who's willing to work together and address the overall needs of that contractor, because nobody's addressing all of them at once. It's a team effort, and that's something we're looking at as well.
Yep. And to Gary's point, since things change and the skill sets of a good insurtech are listening skills, perhaps, and the value of sort of pivoting, perhaps then it's those that maybe don't get it right the first shot, who are willing to work with you if the first 90 days show that what we tried first didn't work and we're going to try something different now. Have you ever had an experience like that where failure has actually informed how to become more successful?
Well, it happens all the time. I had the rapid results initiatives,
Mm-hmm.
90-day little experiments that we do, those projects, they're not always successful.
What percentage do you think are successful? Well, success is a hard thing to put a classification on. Get it right on the first shot.
I would say 50%.
Yeah.
I'd say there's another 25% that get really close. There's probably another 20% that, they get a good result, but they don't actually hit the number that you set out. And there's probably 5% that fail miserably. But the ones that have failed miserably, we usually follow it up, because we always do a deep dive to find out, what did the team learn? What were the takeaways? And if it's a big failure, but we think there's still something there, we follow it up with another one. We change the challenge, we change the team maybe, and we go at it a second time. Some of the biggest successes I've ever had in doing these rapid results for 20 years have followed a complete failure.
Do you feel comfortable maybe sharing one? I'd love to dive a layer deeper on that.
Yeah, the first one I ever did with a customer, this is back in probably 2000. It was, we were trying to get better at doing local programs where you basically, you issue policies in all the countries that they're in. You have to collect the premium locally, and then ultimately it has to come back to that company. Most of them have captives. And so I started to use this technique with the broker and with the customer and us. Same process, but 3 parties. And the first one I did, we had the wrong people on the team. The customer hardly ever showed up. The broker wouldn't call in. It was a massive failure. I didn't give up. I kind of could see that the issue was with how we built the team. I picked a different company and had a huge success. The learnings that came out of that are still being done, basically. That change is still in place. They still call it the same thing that we called that project, which is really kind of funny. Whenever we do rapid results, we try to come up with a cute title for the project.
Sure.
Like the one here in Canada, we used to call it like Grow Minnesota. In Canada, we called it Grow, G-R-O-H, Canada. Get it?
I would have done with my last name is E-A-U, Grow. That's where I thought you were going with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that works too. A.
Yeah, the failures, we had a failure here in the Canadian, the first one we did here. It was a similar issue where the team leader quit. They went to another company. The project manager went to another company. Now, when you lose the team leader and the project manager, stop the project right then and there and start it over with a different team.
Yeah.
That's what I learned on that one.
That's great advice.
Most of the time, it really, really works well because you're doing all of the right things. If you've ever read a guy named John Cotter, he wrote that book at Harvard about the leading change. And he wrote it down into 8 pieces. This rapid results initiative has all 8 of those built into it. So the chances of you being successful are super high because you're doing all the right things. why I really like that process.
Great. Well, I think I'd be interested to know, as we're coming to a close here on the podcast for this evening, where do you think the strategic direction will be next for AXA XL and your team in the construction unit? What new technologies are you looking at next? What, if we can communicate over this podcast, what are you excited about coming down the pipe in 2019?
Yeah, so I think the three pilots that we picked are the ones that we think are going to have the biggest upside. One of them has to do with the weather.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really interesting company that's funded by the CIA, and they collect all the world's weather data, but then they take it and they can create commercial applications. We work with them, and over a 3-week period, they built a completely new application for a construction project. They didn't know anything about construction. They learned from us, and now we have the ability to de-risk weather out of the planning phase in a construction project while it's being built, and then ultimately after it's completed, during the period of repose, we can use that same data to defend claims that may or may not have happened.
Sure.
Great example. The other one is a company called Pillar, which is the atmospheric monitoring. I think there's huge upside for that. And then the third one is basically a video camera company called Onsite IQ that sends it's kind of like Uber for the construction industry. They hire retired construction workers. They put this camera on their back and they have them walk around the site. It takes multiple pictures and you create a 3-dimensional a video image of the site. And we can do that a lot cheaper than what we're currently doing. And you get that record. You have that visual record of how the construction site got built.
Yep.
That's kind of the most challenging thing about a construction project. It does not stay the same. It's always changing, right?
And build hazards are not always accurate to plan or accurate against themselves.
You can
and where we got to go. Go ahead, Gary.
You can actually use the 3D images and compare them against the BIM model, and it can show you where it's not built as it was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
If you get that early enough, you'll save a whole lot of money at fixing something before it goes behind a wall or something like that.
Yeah, so it sounds like broadly wearables, sort of imagery devices, and data plays, the weather. You didn't mention the name of the weather company. If you want to share it here, give them a shout out.
Athenium.
Athenium, that's collecting more data to sort of contextualize claims. These all sound like innovations on the claim side. Am I accurate in that, or are you also using them as part of your risk selection strategy?
Well, our whole business is about claims, right? I mean, that's why we exist. So ultimately, everything we do is to either, help pay a claim or prevent a claim. So the risk engineers are trying to mitigate or prevent the claim from happening. Our claims people are trying to make the experience good for the customer and make sure they get the money in order so they can continue to run the project to completion.
It's the interaction with the customer you want to preserve. And unfortunately, with insurance, a lot of those interactions happen at sort of the worst possible moment, right? When something has gone tragically wrong.
Exactly.
So that makes sense to really focus on that moment.
Yeah, we're putting monitors on people now. You mentioned the wearables, and there's a whole bunch of companies that are doing that right now. We haven't picked a partner yet, but I absolutely see where, employees knowing that they're being monitored behave much differently than employees that aren't being monitored. So they stop doing stuff that they're not supposed to do, like jumping off the back of a pickup truck or sliding down a banister. Yeah, so and the contractors are finding that if they know where the employees are all the time, they can improve the productivity of how they lay out the site. Where do they put the break rooms? Where do they put the laydown material? There's big upside on the productivity side as well as the safety side through some of these wearables.
Very interesting. Justin, did you want to jump in with some thoughts as well?
Yeah, so I'd say, as we're doing these pilots this year, the next step is tying all this data together. And that's where we ultimately need to go, is figuring out how does this data positively impact our customers, and how do we interpret it in ways that we can start to influence the way people behave, respond, or prepare for a project. Can we start to see trends in this data and tie it together in a way that is beneficial to all of us?
Yeah, and on that side, do you think the major challenge is the technology, the integration, the cultural change, the behavioral change? What is?
It's all of the above. I mean, it's everything. And there's no one insurtech doing everything that a construction company needs. There's
Correct.
no one insurtech doing everything an insurance company needs.
Mm-hmm.
So getting that data tied together in a way that we feel can be effective is going to be a big challenge. We're looking for partners with our pilots that are interested in innovation. They realize there's room to improve.
Mm-hmm.
We've done a good job finding those, but the data piece is going to be the toughest.
Great. Well, one last tactical question for any startup who apparently has a wearable device, because you're looking for one this year in 2019, that would make sense for your company. How do you, what is a very tactical, good approach to get a hold of you? We mentioned LinkedIn, emails, knocking on doors, pounding on pavement. Tuesdays at 4:00, a good time to call. When and how do they access you?
I actually answer my phone, so just calling me.
Call. Okay, Gary, don't give your phone number here, but in general, reach out to Gary and ask for Gary's phone number.
Yeah, you lead in with an email, just to get an interesting caption on your email. By the way, that's one of the things that Steve Turner taught us from Turner time. People don't pay enough attention to what they put in the caption of the email, and then it's easy to ignore that email. So, so think about what you're going to put there, and that way somebody will open it and you'll get a response.
Okay, great. Did you have other advice you wanted to share?
No, I think Gary's spot on. Start with an email, and we're happy to have conversations with Wearables or other insurtechs. And we love to hear those that are doing some work in the construction space and that have had some experience with a contractor. And because that's where we're obviously going to go next is go talk to them and see what their experience was with this insurtech first.
So have some references who are willing to put in a good word for you. Well, great. Gentlemen, it has really been my pleasure to get to know your business a little bit better this evening, get to know how you've been so successful in growing the construction unit at AXA XL. And you can really tell that it's the thoughtfulness and the preparedness of building your team, both internally and looking for external technologies that are really going to drive your continued success. So I wish you all of that going forward. Thank you again for joining me on tonight's podcast.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure, gentlemen. So this has been Carey Anne Nadeau with Profiles in Risk. Have a great evening, everyone.